and Alex. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is great to see you all, and it's great to study Tanya together. So we're going to talk about another meditation tonight. These chapters from the chapter that we began with. So these chapters have been all, which I believe was chapter 41. So these chapters have been all about meditation, all about, and really the purpose of the meditation is to develop certain feelings, certain emotions. We've talked about loving God. We've talked about being in awe or reverence before God, fearing God. All of these emotional terms and terminologies. The bottom line is, you and I are meant to not just have a pragmatic, utilitarian relationship with God, like robots, but you and I are meant to have an intellectual and emotional relationship as well. And so we've charted the course of multiple meditations about God, about us, about the world, about God's greatness, about God as our soul, God as our Father. All wonderful meditations. Those last two we covered last week. All about developing a love toward God. We talked about love. We talked about fear or awe. Now, in Kabbalah, you and I know that these are, the Hebrew terms for these, the Kabbalistic terms, are chesed and gevura, or really ahava and yira, love and fear, which correspond love and fear to chesed, loving kindness, and gevura, which is severity, but it's related to fear, awe, etc. So if you just think of it this way, it's a very, very easy way to remember. The right side is all about attraction. The left side is all about rejection. So if you love, you want to get close, you feel close, you're giving to someone else, all of those things are about getting close. That's the right side. The left side is awe, fear. When you're awestruck by something, you typically, the posture goes like this. Whoa, you take a step back. It's not a movement in, like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared of that, let me lean in. No. It's usually, let me move back. Right? That's just the energy. So right side is moving in, left side is pulling away. Today we talk about number 3. Today we talk about not the right side, not the left side, but the middle side. In Kabbalah, the middle sephira of the third emotional power in the middle is Tiferet. Chesed on the right, Gevura on the left, Tiferet, which means harmony or beauty or compassion. That's what's in the middle. Another word, and this is going to be the key word for tonight, the key word for Tiferet is empathy. Empathy is a topic we spoke about last night in the context of giving tzedakah and really feeling for the need of the other person. Empathy is at the key of compassion, is at the key of Tiferet, and it's what makes that center line so powerful. So, to really understand empathy in the context of meditation and divine service, we need to understand what I wrote about. We need to explore what I wrote about in the email that I sent out not that long ago, which is the journey of the soul. And I don't mean the journey of the soul back to its source. I mean from its source down here. In the language of Kabbalah, the soul descends me'igra rama, from a very tall plateau, labira amikta, to a very low space. It goes from the highest of the heights to the lowest of the lows. In fact, the soul is a piece of God. So if you want to talk about how high something is or originates, or how original it originates, the soul is pretty up there. Not many things precede the soul, so to speak. I don't precede in level, time, whatever you want, however you understand precede. Not that many things in existence precede the soul. The soul is extremely lofty. And what happens? The soul is basically sent on a mission, put on a train, on a plane, on an automobile, and the soul is sent down into this world, this lowly world, the place of Alma de Shikra, a place of falsehood, a place of lies, a place of spiritual darkness. By the way, I love this place. You probably also love this place. So I'm not gonna, we're not gonna totally rip into it. But from the soul's vantage point, it's quite flawed and broken. That's the reality. It's quite flawed and broken. So it's got its benefits, right? Olam Hazeh, this world has its benefits, right? We can say l'chaim and seltzer to that. But at the end of the day, for a soul, for a spiritual soul, for a piece of God, this world represents. Oh, hey, Nassim. Yeah, coming to the screen. This world represents. By the way, Nassim, my oldest, is back from yeshiva. Make a cameo. All right, he's going to make a cameo. It's Thursday night. That's how we roll. Nassim probably remembers when we used to do Thursday night Tanya in the house. Right, Nassim?
Yes, I do.
There you go. Bring it in. Lean in a little bit more. There you go. There you go. All the way in. Oh, and Reva's here. Look at that. The whole mishpach. Okay. So, yeah. So the soul originates in the highest of heights. And it goes, are you climbing up? All right, hold on. Let me move back and give you space. Give me a second. So the soul is from the highest of heights, and it goes to the lowest of the lows. And for the soul, it's very painful. I've mentioned this before in other classes. It's a teaching from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that life happens against our will. It's against the will of the soul that the soul is sent down into the body. The soul wants nothing more than to stay where it is, close with God, as a piece of God, and not have all of this mishagas, not have to deal with all this stuff. You understand what the soul has to deal with? Are you kidding me? Don't make it about yourself. Make it about the nudnik that you know. Imagine their soul has to deal with them. Can you imagine? If you want to know what a nudnik is, right? So I'll tell you a story. So there's the shlemiel, the shlemazel, and the nudnik. The shlemiel is the clumsy one who is carrying the soup and spills the hot soup on the other guy. The shlemazel is the guy who gets the soup spilled on him constantly. And the nudnik is the one who says, so tell me, what kind of soup was it? That's the nudnik. So imagine the nudnik is now, right? None of present company excluded. Imagine the nudnik, his soul or her soul. It came from such a high place. I mean, come on. The soul is dealing with a very tough cookie. Yeah? You know what a tough cookie is? Yes? Yes or no? Yes or answer the question. Anyway, the soul is dealing with a very difficult situation.
Cookie.
Yeah. Cookie? You like that expression?
Tough cookie is a mandelbrot.
Yes, a tough mandelbrot, exactly. So, look, the soul has to deal with all of the mishagasin, all of the craziness, all of the how do we say this word? Eccentricities? Eccentricities. Yeah. It was in my head, but it just wasn't coming out right. Eccentricities of the body, all of our stuff and our fears and our bad habits and all of the stuff. And the soul is like, are you kidding me? Can we not just do what we need to do and move on? I mean, can we not just get it done? No. The body's tired. Wonderful. You think the soul needs to sleep? I mean, come on. A soul needs to sleep. A piece of God needs to sleep? Of course not. Imagine the soul is like, all right, are we done yet? Hello, we gotta go. We got so many things to do. So So imagine the pain of the soul. It's very difficult. 1 second, I'll do it again. So it's very difficult for the soul. It's not easy at all. It's quite difficult. It's like a roller coaster. So this represents probably the lowest fall of all. The soul from its perch all the way down. It's like, talk about an elevator drop. I mean, it's real. I mean, it's legit. It's super low. So in Kabbalah, this is used to evoke a meditation. In other words, what I just told you about the soul, understanding what a soul is, understanding where a soul is, understanding what a body is, understanding what this world is, understanding how far the soul has come down into this world, yeah? All of this is a meditation that's meant to evoke not giggles. It's meant to evoke what? It's meant to evoke compassion and empathy. Compassion, empathy for our own soul. So there's a way to look at our own souls, to think about our own neshamas, our own souls, and be a little bit empathetic. In other words, this is not thinking about the greatness of God. This is not thinking about the infinity of God. This is not thinking about creation. It's not thinking about none of those things. It's simply thinking about how great the soul is and how low the soul is finding itself, And the conclusion is, that is a tough gig for the soul. Feel bad for the soul. Now, follow the train of thought for a second. We're going to do it inside. But follow the train of thought. What's the... You're very excited. Why are you eating your hair? What is that? You don't eat hair.
I can't get up.
You want to get up? Here, jump down. Oh, Nassim wants to hold you. He just told me. Okay, so basically, what the result of this, the conclusion of this meditation, is if you start feeling, okay, I'm going to use a word, I don't like this word, but I'm using it anyway. If you start feeling bad for your own soul, it's like, oh man, I feel bad. You know, you were annoyed, like, just work with me here. I know I'm speaking like, direct, but take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but I'm just doing it to get the picture. It's like, a person might say, the soul's been bugging me. Yeah, guilt trips and whatnot. Come on, lay off. Let me just have fun. No, the soul, every time I want to have fun, the soul's like, no, what about this mitzvah, that mitzvah? What about God, Torah? It's like, come on already. But then with this meditation, now I start realizing, one second. I was annoyed at the soul, but now I feel bad for the soul. Because the soul really, she can't help herself. The soul's a piece of God. Of course that's what it wants. Of course it wants to essentially... okay, one second. So, of course the soul wants what she wants. Of course the soul is into what it wants. And now I feel bad for the soul because, imagine if somebody is taken and essentially kidnapped and abducted and put in a foreign environment where they're not allowed to express who they are and what they want. We call that exile, by the way. Galut, exile. What is exile? It's true. I don't know what the word means. Exile means, the meaning of galut, which is Hebrew for exile, means that someone or something is in a place that's not its home, where it doesn't feel at home, where it cannot express itself, where it cannot do what it wants or needs to do. And that's exactly where the soul is. The soul is in galut. The soul is in exile. Now, understand, I want to emphasize, I want to clarify, the soul is not here by accident, and it's not a punishment. It's called a mission. The soul is behind enemy lines, and it's on a mission to make amends to the body and to make the world a brighter place. That's it. That's why the soul is here. In the process, through the process, the soul becomes stronger because it faces adversity. It gains, character, lots of character, and lots of wrinkles, I'm sure, in the soul. But the reason why the soul is here is not for its own benefit. It's not. Some people say, the soul is here so that it gets even stronger, it goes back up higher than it started. That may be true, but that's not why it's here. That's a byproduct, right? It's like, imagine you're a farmer and you end up with very strong muscles. Yeah? Is that why you went to farming? No, you went to farming to make food or whatever, right? To farm, right? As a byproduct, you're lifting, I don't know, whatever you lift as a farmer. I'm not a farmer. Bales of hay? Are they heavy? Why not? They're heavy bales of hay. Yeah. Okay, so as a byproduct, you get strong, but that's not why you're doing it. So does the soul get stronger through its efforts down here? Of course it does. Is that why it's here? No. Why is it here? Not for its own benefit, but rather for the benefit of the body, for the benefit of the world. The soul is here on a completely selfless, for a completely selfless purpose. The soul is here for others. It's on a mission. But in the process, it gets displaced. It's in a foreign environment. It's not always pleasant for the soul. And so when we meditate on how unfortunate on one level it is for the soul down here, and how the soul must be feeling so much pain being separated from her true place on high, and from that obvious and manifest connection with her Creator, right? When a person feels that, and you really empathize with that, not just it, but you feel it, you empathize with the soul. So what's the next step? The next step is you want to do something to help the soul. You feel bad for the soul. So you're like, you know what? Let me throw you a bone. Let's do a mitzvah. I know how much you love God. All right, come, let's do it. All right, I'm in. I know before I was tired, I was lazy, but you know what? I've been thinking about it. I feel bad for you. Let's do a mitzvah. At least in that opportunity, you can connect back with your source, at least for a moment. Right? That's what empathy does. Empathy leads to Torah and mitzvot. Empathy toward the soul leads to doing soulful things to give the soul a chance, even temporarily, to reconnect in an obvious way, in a manifest way, with its source, with her source. Does that make sense, what I just said? Yes?
How do we know that? How do we feel that?
Which part?
That we're doing a mitzvah to help the soul.
Okay, so here we go. So when a person meditates on the lowly state relative, right? The lowly state of the soul, and a person feels sorry for the soul, empathy for the soul. So a person, right? What happens when we see somebody in an unfortunate state? God forbid, and we feel bad. We feel not sympathy but empathy. So what you want to do is you want to help lift them up, right? You want to help them out to lift them up so that they're not in such a difficult position. So the same thing is true with the soul. So when we see the soul in such a difficult position, struggling, we want to make it a little bit easier for the soul. So say, you know what? Soul, I love you. I feel bad for you. So you know what? Let's do some prayers. Let me give you a chance, right? Because the body's going to be on board.
If we feel inner turmoil, is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is when we meditate
right.
on the state of the soul, on the lowest state of the soul, that from the body's perspective, so the body will say to the soul, you know what? I'm on board. I'm not going to be such a reluctant customer. You know what?
It's deliberate. We're doing something
deliberate. We're doing it. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. Let's do a mitzvah. Let's light Shabbat candles. Let's pray a little bit. Let's give some tzedakah. Let's do a mitzvah. Because I know with that mitzvah, I know that you're in that moment you're gonna feel at home once again with your Creator, with God. You're gonna feel at peace, serenity, and I feel bad that you're in such a tumultuous state, in a displaced state. So let me give you, although I can't send you back, but I can give you at least a taste of heaven on earth. So let's do a mitzvah together. And the body. So in other words, we body-centric thinking. We'll say to the soul, I feel bad, let's do it. I'm on board. So that's the crux of chapter 45. Yeah, chapter 45. I have my book over here. Some of you also may have the book, chapter 45. I'm going to pull it up on the screen, and it's actually a very short chapter relative to the previous few chapters, which were really long, extremely long. And we did them over multiple weeks, and it might have been a little bit difficult to help cup and to remember exactly the progression of ideas. Tonight should be fairly straightforward. I don't want to give any much longer of an introduction because I want to jump right in. It's pretty straightforward, it's direct, and it's really beautiful, it's really emotional. So again, just to clarify, this is going to be a new meditation tonight, a meditation not on God, not on anything, not on the world, not on the soul, on the human soul who came down, is now in a lowly state. We think about that, develop empathy. That's the emotion that results from the meditation. Meditation leads to feeling. The feeling is empathy, and that leads to action. So mind, heart, action. And what's the action? To do a mitzvah, to allow the soul in that moment to reconnect with her source. Okay, I am going to share my screen with ya. Because, as Riva, the aforementioned Riva, always loves to say, Riva, where is she? Oh, I forget. Okay, she's good. Anyway, as Riva loves to say, sharing is caring. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes? Chapter 45, beautiful. Okay, let's jump right in. We don't need the preamble. I already did the preamble, my own preamble. Let's go. Here's where the Hebrew begins, and we're going to start with the English translation, which is in the italicized text. There is yet another direct path open to man, open to human beings. In other words, here's another path of divine service, namely, to occupy himself with Torah mitzvot that are lishman, for their own sake. So, the author Rebbe says in the beginning of this chapter, I'm about to drop another meditation that will help you do the right thing, i.e. Torah and mitzvot, do the Jewish things, do the spiritual things, in a way that is done completely for a higher purpose, not for selfish purposes. And what is that path? And what is the meditation? Here we go. It is through the attribute of our forefather Jacob. Peace unto him. This being the attribute of mercy. Rachamim is mercy. Teferet, it's all the same energy. It's that middle third energy. Mercy is empathy, is sympathy. It's all the same. Or empathy, it's all in the same category. Again, to be very clear here, we're talking about which patriarch, which number? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, third patriarch. Abraham is chesed, love. Isaac is gvura, fear and awe. And Jacob is mercy, is compassion, is empathy, is that middle vector, not the right, not the left, but right in the middle. And how do we go about that? Again, I don't want to lose a train of thought here. So we're giving a path for a person to end up doing a mitzvah for the right reasons. Channeling their inner Jacob, channeling their rachamim, their mercy. And what does that mean? Here we go. This is accomplished by first arousing in his mind, in other words, by first meditating on, but first arousing in his mind great compassion before God for what? Who you having compassion for? For the divine spark which animates the divine soul that has descended from its source, the life of life, the blessed Ein Sof. Basically, you stand before God, and what is your meditation? What is your thought process? What are you thinking about? You're filled with compassion for whom? For the divine spark of your soul, which has descended all the way from its source, the lofty space of the life, the blessed Ein Sof, from the infinite, from the space of the infinite, from God's essential space, the soul spark has descended. Where does the soul come from? It comes from God, the blessed Ein Sof, and it is God who pervades all the worlds and encompasses all the worlds, and in comparison with whom everything is accounted as nothing, and has been. So that's where the soul comes from. The soul comes from the essence of God that is both inside and outside the world. In other words, the essence is not in or out. It's both, and it's nothing. It's beyond and within at the same time, because essence is essence. So this is where the soul comes from. The soul doesn't come from an immanent divine energy, doesn't come from a transcendent divine energy. It comes from an essential divine energy, which is greater than the both of them. It's coming from the essence of God. And then comparison with whom everything is accounted as nothing compared to the essence of God. Now this soul spark, or this piece of God that forms the core of our souls, this has now been clothed in the body, which is called the mashka de chavya, a serpent's skin. Yeah, that's what the body is called, the skin of a snake. Thumbs up if you think if this is a complimentary term. Thumbs down if you think it's somewhat of a derogatory term. There you go. It's meant to be a bit of a derogatory term. It's meant to be a bit of a wake-up call. The body is called the serpent's skin, mashka de chavya. This is coming from Zohar, right? You see that little footnote that popped up? Mentioned earlier, chapter 31, quoting the Zohar. Okay, it's coming from Kabbalah. Kabbalah calls the body serpent skin. Why? Because the body is dishonest, and the body is, it's up. Oftentimes, it's up to no good, and it's the skin. It's the skin, serpent skin. You know, serpents change their skins all the time, right? They shed one skin, they get another skin. People say one thing, mean another thing, change their mind. So hard to pin down people, right? It's very difficult. And it's the skin in the sense that it surrounds the soul. As long as a person is alive, the soul is enclosed, is completely surrounded, not physically but conceptually, with the body. And the body is far removed from the light of the king's countenance, right? The physical body is very, very distant from the light of God's face, so to speak. It's not literal, but metaphorical. At the greatest possible distance is the body. Notice God is on one end of the extreme, and the human body, which is filled with all sorts of challenges, right, is at the other end of the extreme. Since this world is the nadir, right? Nadir, nadir. It's the lowest point, or is it the highest point? The lowest point. There you go. Okay. Thank you. It's the lowest point, of the coarse klipot. In other words, it doesn't get any lower than this world. This world is the lowest possible place. That's it. The Hebrew doesn't say nader, it says tachlis. It means it's the epitome of. This world is tachlis haklipos v'hagasas. It's the epitome, it's the ultimate of the coarse shells. Klipot are shells that cover over the truth. It's the lowest of the low. Within the whole schematic of existence of creation of the universe, spiritual and physical, this is the lowest space. So when a person meditates on all this, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about how our souls have a divine spark, and that emanates from the Blessed Ein Sof, from God Himself. And this is not a lower level, it's not even a transcendent level, it's God's pure essence, which is beyond all of that. And now this soul spark is sent away from God, is enclosed in the serpent skin, i.e. the body, far removed from God's countenance, at the greatest possible distance, because this world is the lowest of the low. So you start, etc., hulu, etc. So now we have a meditation going. So now we're feeling bad for the soul. Yeah, you had it all. Sorry, bud. I mean, you had it all. It was amazing. And now look how the mighty have fallen. Let's continue. And especially will he feel compassion for his soul when he recalls all of his actions and utterances and thoughts since the day he came into being, unworthy as they were. In other words, the next step of meditation is, Gewalt, what have I done to my soul? Not only did my soul come down into the world and just remain neutral, but what happened? I took this soul spark and the life that it gave me, and what have I been thinking about? What have I been saying all these years? What have I been doing all these years? Gewalt, I've taken the soul, I've taken the spark of God that comes from the highest of the high spaces, and it not only has it come down into me, into this world, but then I further lowered it through my conscious choices, through my actions that were negative, through the words that I've said that were negative, through negative thoughts that I've had, and I've taken a spark of God, and not just bring it into this world, but on top of that, continue to bring it lower, lower, lower. And the king of the world is thereby fettered by the tresses. In other words, God is connected with what we do. By the impetuous thoughts of the brain, God is, so to speak, fettered by his impetuous thoughts. For Jacob, referring to the Jewish people, Yaakov chevel nachaloso. Jacob, I don't like this translation. Yaakov chevel nachaloso means that Jacob, the rope, is his inheritance. What does it mean that Jacob, the rope, is his inheritance? Let me stop sharing for a second. Tug of war. Two teams standing on either side of a mud pit. And each side is looking to do one thing. And what is it? To pull the rope, to schlep the others. What happens when you pull the rope towards you? The other party comes closer to you or comes down to you. Right? If somebody's on, let's just do up and down. If someone's on top and you pull, what's going to happen? They're going to come falling down. So what happens when we take God's soul, this pure spark of, tresses and gutters. What happens when you take the pure soul connected with God and you start schlepping it down into every place that you and I go? Yeah? Because the soul goes with us. It's not like the soul stays behind. The soul's like, nah, you know what, I'm gonna get to bed early. No, the soul doesn't have that option. The soul is now in the serpent's skin, for better or for worse, it's with you. Half soul will travel. Right? The soul doesn't check out. Sorry. No out-of-body experience for the soul right now. The soul is very much involved. And it is miserable in certain situations. But it's there. Not only is the soul there, but the soul connected with God, God is also there. In that space. In that space. Schlepping God, schlepping the soul into that space. That's what's going on. All of this is part of the meditation to build the compassion, by the way, just so you know. We have to remain focused on where we are in this. as, let's continue, as in the above illustration of one pulling a rope, and so forth, or etc. Okay. Basically, it's what I just said about the rope. It's when you pull the rope, the other party is brought to where you are. So, if not you, I don't mean you specifically. I mean, so if a person is in a negative place and a not so spiritual place, guess who else is there? The soul, and by virtue of that, God Himself. And this, he says, this is the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah. Shekhinah means divine presence. There's something called the Galot HaShekhinah, the exile of the Shekhinah, the exile of God's presence. And what does it mean? What does it mean that God is exiled? How could God ever be exiled? Right? How could the Shekhinah, God's presence, ever be exiled? Who can hide on God? Right? Who can exile? Are you going to lock up God? Who are you to lock up? A human being can't lock up God. What does it mean that God is that the Shekhinah is in exile? This is what it means. God creates, an emanation from God is the soul, and the soul is put into the body, and the body makes choices, maybe not so good choices, and it schleps the soul and it schleps God into that space. Now, it's not like God couldn't get out of the space. Of course He could, but God's way of creating the world is that He is drawn where we're drawn. That's it, for better, for worse, and this is the meaning of the exile of the Shekhinah. So now we can start feeling compassion. Concerning this matter, not yet. Yeah. Concerning this it says, in Isaiah, and let him return to God and have mercy upon him. When we return to God, we're having mercy on God. Because as long as we weren't with God, we were schlepping Him within our every whim. Are you with me on what he's saying and how he's interpreting this verse? Oh, what a powerful verse, this one right here. It says a person should do tshuva because doing so is not just good for him, it's good for God. Him with a capital H. Let the person return to God, and in doing so, the person will be having mercy upon him, upon God. Why? Because as long as a person is in a negative space, God is also in that space. So have mercy on God, for God's sake, right? There we go. In other words, for Hashem's own sake, we should be seeking a better path. It's fantastic. Sure, enjoy. The biggest seltzer fan, right there. Just pointing out. Okay, so this is the core of the meditation. The soul is lofty. It's a piece of God. It's in us, which is already tremendously distant from where it was. And then we make choices that are not so great, not so wonderful, and we further lower the soul. And in doing so, we lower God, who chose to go where the soul and where the body goes. So there's that rope hooked around God. God willingly hooked it around Himself, but God is connected. And now when we make the choice, we're schlepping God. So Rabbi Shalom, for God's sake, let's do the right thing to let God off the hook. So, okay, so let's get back. Concerning this matter, I'm going to reset that sentence because it continues into the next one. Concerning this matter, it is written, and let him return to God and have mercy upon him, arousing great compassion towards the divine name who dwells among us, as it is written, who dwells among them in the midst of their uncleanliness. In other words, God dwells amongst us. Okay, here, sit nicely. There you go. So what the verse says, and this verse is from Leviticus 16, it says that God dwells amongst them in the midst of their uncleanliness. In other words, amongst us, no matter what state we're in, God is with us. God does not bounce. God is with us. So if we want to get God out of it, you know what it means? Sometimes we don't realize our own value. And therefore we don't mind, God forbid, degrading or debasing ourselves because we forget how valuable we are. So this is a reminder. Don't think about yourself. What about God? Is God valuable? Yeah, of course. Okay. So do you know when you and I do such and such, God is also being schlepped into that situation, into that idea, into those words, into those actions? Yeah, that's a pretty scary thought. So it's not just about you, it's about God. So you still gonna do it? If you know that you're schlepping God into that? Think about it this way. Imagine a person makes a bad choice to go into a place that he shouldn't be going into, or she shouldn't be going into. Right? Would you take a child there? No. Don't take a child there, right? No, innocent and pure and whatever. Okay? So then why are you going there? Are you with me? In other words, because you're not so pure and innocent, why not? Why not? So we make choices because in that moment, we're not in touch with our value. Because we forget about how precious we are. So here's a meditation. Think about how precious the soul is, and you are schlepping it there. Think about how precious God is, and you're schlepping God there. So have Rahmanis. Have compassion. On who? On God. Have compassion, Rahmanis, on who? On the soul. This is what the verse says. Let him return to God and have mercy upon God. Have compassion for God. Let God off the hook. All right. This is the meaning of the verse. Continue back inside. This is the meaning of the verse from Genesis. And Jacob kissed Rachel. This is when Jacob and Rachel met at the well. Jacob is looking for a wife. He meets Rachel. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. That's what the verse says. On a simple level, it means that there was a guy named Jacob. There was a woman named Rachel. He saw her. He liked her. She liked him. And they kissed. Okay? But he lifted up his voice and he wept. So the commentators say, why did he weep? Because he realized, he saw in a prophecy that they wouldn't be buried next to each other. Famously, Rachel is buried in the tomb of Rachel's tomb, in a different part, different place, and Jacob is in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. Okay, but that's a commentary. But here's the Kabbalah of it. Why is Jacob kissing Rachel and why is he crying? For Rachel is so many footnotes are popping up. My apologies. For Rachel is Knesset Yisrael, the community of Israel, the fount of all souls. So Rachel is Malchut. Rachel is the source of the souls. Why and how? Work with me on this. Rachel is symbolic, Kabbalistically, of the source of the souls. And what about Jacob? And Jacob, with his supernal attribute, which is mercy, right? Remember I said Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob is number 3. Jacob is empathy. Jacob is compassion. Jacob is mercy. So Jacob, with his symbolic supernal attribute, which is mercy, of Atzilut, is the one who arouses great compassion for her, Rachel, the source of all Jewish souls. That's why Jacob kisses Rachel and he cries. Jacob is the compassion for the Rachel, for the souls that have been sent down into such an ugly environment and compounded with the choices that human beings make. He lifted up his voice upwards to the fount of higher mercies. He appeals to God himself, source of the 13 attributes of mercy. Indeed, they're called the Father of mercies, of Arachamim, and their source. So he lifts up his voice in mercy, in empathy, and he cries out for how low the souls Rachel have fallen. Not literally Rachel, but metaphorically. Vayevk, and he cries and he wept, in order to awaken and draw from the boundless divine mercies, abundant compassion upon all the souls and upon the fount of the community of Israel, to raise them from their exile and to unite them in the Yichud Elyon, higher unity of the light of the blessed Ein Sof, at the level of kisses. So everything has a mystical explanation. So why does he weep? He weeps to awaken divine compassion. And that should awaken the level of kisses. What is kisses? What is kissing? What is kisses? Which is the attachment of spirit with spirit, breath with breath. As it is written, let him kiss me, from Song of Songs, Shir Shirim, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. So what is a kiss? Right? A mouth-to-mouth kiss. So it's a connection of breath. It's a very strong connection. It's a connection, mouth to mouth, breath to breath, speech to speech. So what does that mean for a human being? And spiritually, which means, spiritually, the union of the word of man, of the human being, who studies Torah verbally by saying words of Torah, with the word of God, namely the halacha, God's word, God's speech, Jewish law. This union resembles the kisses of the mouth. So, before we get to the next sentence, which is right there, this is powerful. He's just explained the verse from Genesis about Jacob and Rachel's encounter and the kiss and the cry. He's explained it completely from a Kabbalistic perspective, completely from a mystical perspective, and it's all about us having empathy and sympathy and mercy for the soul that has fallen so low. So Rachel, let me stop sharing so that I can see you all. So who are the characters? Rachel and Jacob. Rachel is the collective of souls. Rachel is symbolic of the souls. Jacob is symbolic of, who do we say Jacob is symbolic of? Did we give a symbolism for Jacob? Oh yeah. Jacob is compassion, right? Jacob is the compassion, is the mercy, is the empathy. So what's going on? Jacob, which is the human capacity for empathy, for mercy, for compassion, is having that mercy and compassion about whom? Rachel, the souls. Because what happened to the souls? They were so lofty and then they fell down so low. Right? So the souls descended so low. So that Jacob feels compassion and cries. Right? Crying to evoke divine mercy. Stop the situation. Stop the bleeding. You have souls that are coming to bodies and ending up who knows where. And then the correction happens through the kiss. The kiss is the tikkun. The kiss is the correction. What's the correction? To connect mouth with mouth. And what are the two mouths? The human being's mouth with God's mouth. God speaks the Torah, and then we speak the Torah. And when we study Torah, when we verbalize the words of Torah, God's words, when we say God's words, we're kissing God. That's the Kabbalah of the kiss. The Kabbalah of Jacob's kiss of Rachel is Jacob feels compassion for the soul. As we said before, when we think about how lowly our soul has fallen, the next resolution is, let's help pick it back up. I feel bad. Let me help you back up. You see somebody falling, right? You don't laugh at them. You don't keep on walking by, right? You help them up. So you see how low the soul has fallen. So then the natural reaction is, let me help the soul back up. How do we help the soul back up? With the kiss, with the connection, with the speech to speech, the mouth to mouth connection, studying Torah, studying God's Torah, God's word, which is Torah. When we speak with our mouth, when our words are saying God's words, that's the kiss. And that lifts the soul back up, the soul that has fallen so low. And we then schlepped it into negative spaces. We elevate it back up through the kiss. Make sense? Yes? Okay, more or less. Let's continue. I don't want to lose the momentum here, because again, it's a short chapter, and it's like one punch. So I want to see it all the way through. The same thing. So we connect back with God after the empathy and after the crying, the tears, with our mouth, with a kiss, which is studying Torah. So too, he says, through thinking. So not only verbalizing, but thinking in our brains, Torah thoughts, because then it's not a kiss, but it's a telepathy. It's a thought-to-thought connection. Mortal thought is united with divine thought. And so too action, the third of our trifecta. And so too mortal action is united with divine action through active observance of the commandments. So we can connect back with God after feeling the empathy, after feeling the low state of the soul, after crying over Rachel and the state of the soul, we can reconnect the soul back up with its source through the mouth, the kisses, which is studying Torah verbally, thinking words of Torah, and doing mitzvahs. Through our mouth, through our minds, and through our deeds. Thought, speech, and action. Those are the three channels for reconnection, plugging the soul back into its source. And specifically, he says, of all of the mitzvot, of all the commandments that we could do, which is the one that really plugs us into God? In particular, it's the practice of charity and loving kindness. In Hebrew, you all know these words, tzedakah and chesed. Tzedakah is giving charity. Chesed is all forms of kindness. All forms of kindness are included in chesed. So it's when we do specific, he says, studying Torah, with our mouth, speaking words of Torah, thinking words of Torah, and doing mitzvot, lift the soul back up. But what mitzvah specifically? Charity and kindness. Why? For chesed, because chesed, kindness, is symbolic of God's right arm. Not literally, God does not have a body, so it's not a literal thing, but it's symbolic. Remember, right is always the giving side. Left is the withholding. Right, the right side is always the chesed, the kindness, the love, the connection, the coming closer. So chesed, kindness, is God's right arm, so to speak, and this is, as it were, an actual embrace. So when we give, when we help someone else out, when we give tzedakah, when we do an act of chesed, an act of kindness for another human being, so then it's like we're embracing with our arm. It's like we're hugging God in that moment. As it is written, and his right arm, divine kindness, embraces me. So when we embrace another human being with love, God embraces us with love. And now we have, again, solidified the resolution to the exile, to the displacement of the soul. The soul is sent below, and the soul is found in a world filled with klipot, filled with shells that cover the truth, where it's found specifically in a body, in the serpent's skin, and then on top of that, a person makes negative choices, God forbid, to pull the soul, to schlep it even lower. When we wake up and we have a little bit of empathy, so then our resolution is, let's lift the soul back up. And how do we do so? I'm going to go in the order that he mentioned these items. Speak words of Torah, think words of Torah, do a mitzvah, and specifically embrace another human being with love. Tzedakah, chesed, and then we're embracing God. Let's continue inside. While one's occupation in the Torah by word of mouth and concentrated thought constitutes a level of actual kisses. So, the soul can embrace God and kiss God after the separation. After the soul has been separated and sent down and schlepped down even further, through empathy, through mercy, through Yaakov, through Jacob, we can help the soul reconnect with a hug and a kiss with God. Studying Torah with mouth and mind, and giving tzedakah, giving charity. The hug, or the kiss and the hug. Now, he says in this way, right? In this way, through this path, one is able to attain the level of ahava rabbah, great love. We haven't talked about love tonight at all. We talked about empathy. We talked about compassion. We talked about seeing the soul as such a beautiful creature who's now in such a negative place, so down on her luck. And all we want to do is help the soul reconnect. But through that process, a person reaches the level of ahava rabbah, great love. If you recall a few weeks ago, we talked about ahava rabbah being the greatest level of love that only comes as a gift from above. And now we understand when the gift is given. When is a person given the gift from above of this great love? It's when a person has had empathy on their own soul and compassion and mercy. And because they recognize that the soul only wants connection, and so often the soul is getting the opposite. A person commits to hooking up the soul with Torah study and acts of kindness, and to do it with love, that triggers the great love in the consciousness of one's heart. He'll feel it, or she'll feel it, as it is written. And here's the final, the big finish. The verse says, and this verse is in Isaiah chapter 29, it says, of Jacob who redeemed Abraham. It says it's Jacob who reclaims Abraham. Follow the connections. Abraham is love. I told you before, Abraham is the right side. Right? Abraham is love. Jacob is compassion or mercy. So how do we get the love? Through Jacob. It's Jacob, compassion, who redeems, reclaims, brings about Abraham, the great love, the Avarabba. That's the process, as is explained elsewhere, and that ends chapter 45. So in summation, I'm hoping that you caught that I did a decent job explaining these concepts. I hope you got the connections and their terms as they're couched in Kabbalah. The gist of it is, though we have a new meditation, the meditation is not about the greatness of God. The meditation is not about how God is our life. The meditation is not about how God's our Father. The meditation is simply like this. The soul is a piece of God. The soul was sent to a very dark place. On top of that, we further suffocate the soul by putting it into scenarios that it does not want to be in. When a person really thinks about that and really realizes what the implications of that are, vis-a-vis the soul and its source, which is God, a person will be like, what am I doing? Gewalt, I feel bad for my soul. And in that moment, you want to lift up the soul and you want to allow the soul to have a good moment, to have a moment of connection. So what are you going to do? You're going to give the soul, you're going to be on board, you're going to consent for the soul to have her experience of connection. And what does that experience look like? It looks like a hug and a kiss. Because for too long, we've schlepped the soul into the dark alleys of life. And now it's time to allow the soul what she wants, out of compassion, out of complete Rahmanas. You know what Rahmanas is? It's a hard word to translate. Rahmanas, you feel bad. Pasha, like literally just you feel bad. You feel Rahmanas. I feel terrible. I feel bad for the soul. You know what? Go ahead. We'll study Torah. What do you need? We'll study Torah. We'll do a mitzvah. No problem. I feel bad. Right? You're stuck. You're stuck somewhere with no way out. Soul, I feel bad. I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to give you a chance. And when you give the soul a chance, what are you giving her? You're giving her the chance to kiss God, the chance to connect with mouth, connect with mind, and connect with the arm through chesed. And then what happens? And through this, first of all, whatever we do as a result of this compassion is genuine. We're really doing it. There's no ulterior motive. It's purely for the soul to connect with God. It's pure. It's a pure experience of connection. And when that happens, we are suffused with the Avarab, with the great love. And that's how Jacob brings about Abraham. That's how the compassion brings about the love. So, at the end of the day, although the previous chapters directly spoke about meditations of love, today was indirectly getting also to a place of love. Before we had the last 3 chapters talked about this meditation will help you love God. That meditation will help you love God. But it's all about God and love. Today, it wasn't about God and love. It was about compassion for the soul. Feel bad. But that leads to love. Same destination, even on a higher level. So, my takeaway is we have to know what we have inside. It all begins with knowing what we have inside. We have a true gift. And listen, no judgment. We can only speak for ourselves. So it's not a judgment. But look, are we really allowing the soul to do what it needs to do? Rahmanas, yeah, Rahmanas. You spelled it right. Yeah. Adina Malka, that's right. Rahmanas, yeah. That's it. That's how I would spell it. Yeah. Maybe Rahmanas, ES, Rahmanos. The only question would be the second to last letter of the vowel, but it works fine. It's in the chat for those that are wondering what I'm talking about. how to spell Rachmanis. So look, first step is we know we have a soul. And then we ask ourselves the question, so now what are we doing with it? Are we celebrating it? Are we throwing a parade for it? Are we allowing it to breathe? Are we allowing it to get oxygen? Or are we suffocating it? Or are we schlepping it into the dark I love that expression. It's my new favorite. Are you schlepping it into the dark alleys? Right? Not you. Or are we schlepping it into the dark alleys? What are we doing? So number one, it's a wake-up call. So number one, it's recognize, appreciate what we have inside. Number two is an honest accounting. What are we doing? And then the result inevitably should be, I feel bad. I got this soul and I'm schlepping. It's connected with God and I'm schlepping. I feel terrible. Let me give the soul an opportunity. And when we give the soul the opportunity, everything changes. Everything changes. The souls, we let the soul breathe. It's genuine. And then we're filled with this great love. The love of that connection. Born of empathy. This is chapter 45. It's a beautiful chapter. It's a short chapter. It's a simple chapter. But it's a person could strive their entire life to really integrate these ideas into their life. Not just to be something that we know about. Oh yeah, I know what chapter 45 says. Something to live by. To live by. And I want to just reiterate one more thing that I said before. The reason why we allow ourselves to go into those dark alleys of life is because we forget who we are. Because we forget. So we're talking tonight about reminding ourselves and saying, "Ay, Gevald, look what I've done. I've taken the soul into such a place." But we should know before we go in there who we are. We should know before we go into those places, either literal or metaphorical. We should know who we are and what we're about and what our true calling and gifts are. And then that will hopefully help us stay away from trouble and remain plugged in. But let's not discount the power of the empathy, the power of the compassion to really transform the situation. Made sense? Make sense? Sorry. Yes? Okay, good. All right, next week next week we will not explore chapter 46 because we have a very special speaker, Edith Eger, who is speaking, Dr. Edith Eger from California. She'll be joining us live. She is a 90-plus-year-old Holocaust survivor. She is a clinical psychologist of renown, and she is also the New York Times best-selling author of the book called The Choice, and she'll be joining us for an exclusive engagement next Thursday night, August 20th at 7 p.m. I don't think we're going to end on time, and it's going to be coming right after that event, so we're planning on taking a one-week hiatus with Tanya. But next week, join us. If you don't yet have an RSVP, please do so. It's only $10 to join. It's a memorable event. It's a historic event. So please join us. We're still actually looking for some event sponsors. So if you can help out also on top of that, that would be wonderful. But that's next week, August 20th, 7 p.m. Join us and please help spread the word. She is incredible, and her story will just move all of us. Her main theme in clinical psychology is about overcoming trauma. So she deals a lot with that. She talks a lot about that. And I think we're all in a time when there's challenges and new challenges in front of us. And so to hear from somebody who's gone through a lot and has come out the other side with such positivity and such courage and such hope and such powerful messages, it's a very, very helpful and healthy experience for us all to join in together. So I look forward to seeing you then and before then also. All right, great to have you here. Have a wonderful evening. I did see, hold on, before we close it out. Oh, Mark asked, he would always have a trick, or this or that or the other. But tonight, you know what? He did pull off an old trick, one of the old tricks. What was it? He's a Rubik's Cube solver. He knows how to solve a Rubik's Cube in a very, very quick amount of time. And we had a Rubik's Cube lying around. He just got home from yeshiva, and he did his thing and solved it. I'm like, oh, cool. I guess we should put the stickers back on. I'm kidding. They don't have stickers anymore that you can peel off and put back on. That was the old life hack. Anybody here know how to do a Rubik's Cube? No? How to solve one? Neither do I. So, it's apparently like an algorithm. Just, you just know the right... Anyway. Okay, good. It's great to see you all. Have a good night. And keep the flame of Torah burning in your heart and soul. All right. Stay healthy. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Have a good Shabbos. Bye, y'all.